What's up? Dealing with the technical problems here on this beautiful Tuesday evening. Had to start, then restart computer. Had some glitches, but looks like we're doing well now. We're live on YouTube and Facebook. And sorry if you missed it, but I'll go ahead and cut this up and we'll have the recording. But anyway, today, Tuesday at 5:38 p.m., we are going to be talking about the extended moratorium on foreclosures and evictions. It may not be what you thought, though. It might not be what you think. It's a little bit different. And it's not different than last month, but still, a lot of the newspapers and media people aren't telling people specifically what this moratorium does. So I'm going to show you specifically right now. So right now, if we look at this story, this is from a place over in Tampa area, and it says DeSantis extends the eviction foreclosure ban again. This is the now fifth time that he's extended this ban, which is just going to make real estate crazy sometime in the near future. I have an idea, which I'm going to share with you. So it says here, if you can read along, the moratorium on evictions and foreclosures got a late night extension by Governor Ron DeSantis, although moving forward, it will shift some of the burden of relief back onto renters. Now, there's two things in that. One, I don't know why he waits until the night before the thing expires at midnight or a little before that, and then goes ahead and extends it. People are living there with the sword of Damocles over their head, just waiting to find out what's going to happen. And then with the stroke of the pen, he goes, yeah, I'll do it now, when he knew days ago he was going to do it. So I'm not really sure what the reason is for that. It's kind of creepy. If you're going to do it, do it. And in fact, if you're going to do it, perhaps you should have just went ahead and did it through like November 15th. Wink, wink. You got to know why there. But I'll explain that too. So what exactly is this thing do? And as you can see down here, it says, and let me blow this up a little bit more, landlords can still file eviction. However, final judgments will be withheld until the moratorium is lifted. So everything, everyone thinks that there's a moratorium on the process, and that's not true. Not true at all. There is no moratorium on the foreclosure or eviction process. Your landlord, your bank can go into court, file electronically, continue the process against you, right up until the moment of final judgment. So if a judge decides he wants to have hearings, if a judge decides that he's making a declaration, the only thing he's going to hold off on is the final judgment of telling the sheriff to go toss you out. Everything else is still moving. There's nothing else that's stalled. So like you see here, it says renters behind on monthly payments will need to file a motion in court proving they have a coronavirus hardship causing them to miss rent payments such as job loss or other income reduction. That's a key. How many renters are sitting back thinking, hey, we're good. There's a moratorium. There's nothing we have to do. When that's not true at all. If you are a renter and you are not following the rules, one, you're not paying your rent, but number two, if you're not following the rules, you're going to find yourself in deep, deep trouble. Again, read that. Renters behind on monthly payments will need to file a motion in court proving they have a coronavirus hardship causing them to miss rent payments such as loss, job loss, or other income. Now, they're not going to have to prove it in a motion. That's not what a motion is. A motion is you're making a claim that this is what happened. Eventually, you are going to have to prove it if it gets to court, when it gets to court, but you don't have to prove it in the motion. You don't prove it right then and there. And let me just put the big asterisk. I'm not an attorney, nor do I want to play one on this video. So contact your attorney if you have any questions. Excuse me. However, think about this. Most people, I would say eventually everybody in foreclosure or in an eviction process more than likely has no idea how to file a motion. And because they don't know how to file a motion, how in the hell are they going to get out of this? Because again, read this closely. It says the payments will be if you're behind on your payments, you will need to file a motion in court, which means you have to create a court document, which more than likely, if you're an attorney or involved in a bunch of legal, paralegal stuff, you're not going to be able to do that. You don't know the formatting. You don't know where to send it. You don't know how to get it delivered. You don't know how to get it served. There's a huge process in putting together a motion. And because of that hurdle, I'm just wondering how many people will not be able to be covered by this moratorium. So as you read this, it says, when the hardship passes, all accrued rent payments dating back to April or earlier when the moratorium was put in place will be due. All of it. Even if the court grants you a stay for right now because of the moratorium, and you owe April, May, June, July, August, or beyond that, 6-7 months of payment, that bill is going to come due all at once, unless you come up with some agreement with your landlord. Other than that, be ready to move. I think some people have not realized that this is going to come to a very abrupt halt for a ton of people. Because all this has done is put it off for a while. The meter's still running on this taxi. And then when the ride ends, you have to pay all of it. Not a portion, not payments unless your landlord agrees to it. You're going to have to come to court and say, okay, here's my deposit for $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000. All of it. What do you think is going to happen? We are delaying the inevitable. We are going to see, and I've been saying it for some time, that we're going to see a tsunami hit the courts. Now, before I get into that, let me show you, what some of the people here are saying. So here's an attorney said last week an extension would be a short-term fix, but not a long-term solution. None of the forbearances, none of the executive orders did anything with the rent or mortgages that have been accruing. So all these evictions, all these forbearance claims that did not wipe away the rent or wipe away the mortgage payments, they are all due and they all remain open. That's what I'm trying to tell you. I think some people think moratorium and they thought, well, means I don't have to pay my rent. He didn't put a moratorium on rent. There's never been a moratorium on your mortgage payments. There's never been a moratorium or a stay on your rent. The moratorium was your landlord or bank could not toss you out. So you owe all of that money. There's no getting around it. You owe every single dime. Now, if you've done some improvements to the property that you can show receipts, if your landlord acted in bad faith and did some things that you can claim, but even then you're going to have to follow the law to make that claim. There may be some mitigating circumstances that you can put before the court that says, I don't owe all of this. I owe this much maybe, but you still have to, at that point, prove what you owe, and then the judge will determine what it is. And then you're going to have probably a couple days to come up with all of it. All of it. Less whatever, it gets knocked off. Now, this is with the understanding that your bank and your landlord don't work with you. If they work with you and come up with an agreement or do some sort of mediation, then that's fine. But if you have a bank, a mortgage lender, a landlord who's like, pay me or effing move, you're going to have to pay all of that money at one period. It's called deposit in registry of the court. The court will demand that you put that back rent into the court system. You have to drop that $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 into the court. If you do not put it into court, then you will get a default judgment. If you get a default judgment, as soon as the moratoriums are done, you're going to be in line, which is another thing to talk about. in queue to be booted out. So this does not, and I just want to repeat because I get a lot of questions, there is no such thing as a moratorium on paying your rent or your mortgage. It just simply does not exist. You have to pay every single dime. And again, with the asterisk that there could be some mitigating circumstances that could change that. But for the most of us, most part of everything, it's coming. There's no denying it is coming. So let's look at the actual, what was it? Where is it? Okay, so here's a copy of the actual EO, executive order. And in this executive order, it says, provides for, and again, I don't know why he keeps doing it for 1 month, but it limited, understand that word, a limited 1 month extension to the EO of 2180, which made significant changes to the prior versions of the mortgage foreclosure and eviction relief orders. So if you don't know how to read that legalese, you don't realize that things changed in the previous order. He completely changed it. It's something that a lot of people aren't understanding. You have to go talk to a lawyer, talk to somebody if you're in one of these positions where you're being foreclosed or evicted. The relief has completely changed. So what is it? And here it is right here. A property owner may initiate a mortgage foreclosure or eviction process in any situation, allowed under existing Florida statutes. The executive order only halts the final action of certain foreclosures and evictions. So what's the definition of that word certain foreclosures and evictions? Follows up. The protections of halting final action for certain foreclosures and evictions are only for persons affected by the COVID-19 emergency. So right there, you're seeing he's narrowing it. If you whatever reason didn't pay your rent, but unless you can show that you've been impacted negatively by the COVID, there's no moratorium for you. The executive order does not cover tenants whose lease expired. So if your lease expired last month, you got no hope. You got to get out. Or when non-payment occurs due to reasons other than a COVID-19 emergency. Executive order applies only to residential, so businesses, you're screwed. You got to get out. So understand that. That's a huge distinction that not a lot of people are understanding. This is only for people who can show that they've been impacted financially by the COVID crisis pandemic. So if you were a server at a restaurant and the restaurant closed down, you've been negatively impacted. If you were worked in a hair salon or you owned a hair salon and it was not allowed to be open, you were negatively impacted. If you were a gym owner and you weren't able to open, you were negatively impacted. If you were an essential business and just fell behind on your rent, you're in trouble. The knock on the door is coming. I mean, it couldn't be more clear. You can see it right there in black and white. It says exactly where things are headed. Now, let's say you were the bartender and your nightclub got shut down and you were renting a place and you definitely were impacted by COVID. There's no doubt. If they shut down your bar or your nightclub or your restaurant and you didn't have the ability to make any money, then you were negatively impacted. But, and I do mean but, if you go back to this article that I just showed you, and this is pretty clear. Again, this only works if you file a motion in court proving or alleging that you were negatively impacted by the COVID. So, let's say that you were that bartender. Let's say you're that bartender who did indeed have a problem with the COVID, but you didn't file a motion to be covered and have the relief from the moratorium. Then you're screwed. So that's what changed in the last couple of months. And in this last couple of months, we've seen the initial order, then the extension of it, and it carries that caveat. And that caveat means, well, actually, there's two caveats. One, your rent continues to accrue. And number two, and the only way you're going to be subject to a moratorium, the only way is if you can show that the COVID affected you negatively, financially negative. Other than that, you're not protected. So the person who hasn't had the ability to pay their rent because of COVID now has to go find an attorney. It has to find an attorney who can understand all this legalese and begin to, somehow file a motion after the fact and maybe, see if we can't fix it. But as it is right now, you're going to have to come up with that money. Be right back.
Hear what you need to know to succeed in today's real estate market.
Now understand, again, I'm going to put an asterisk and just boom, boom, boom notation. I'm not an attorney, not trying to play an attorney. I'm just reading. I'm reading and telling you things based upon my experience in the real estate business. I suggest you call an attorney right away if you're in a problem with your rent or behind on your mortgage. Either way, you're going to need an attorney or paralegal to help you. Don't take it from Uncle Fred. Don't take it from the guy down the street, but you're going to have to do these things if you want to, make it happen. Now, let's go into the second phase of this where, this is kind of important. Why I think this is all a ruse. And I don't mean a ruse in terms of people having to pay their rent or get evicted. The whole idea of waiting to the last minute to drop these executive orders that people need to find out what they're going to do with their life. I don't think, to be completely wrong, I don't think we're going to see the moratorium being lifted until December 1st. Here's why. If December 1st, it may be January 1st, but it will not happen, in my estimation, in October. I think it's going to be extended on October 1st or November 30th, as he always waits to the last minute. And then from there, it'll go to, December 1st. He'll push it out. Here's why. We are in probably the most contentious election in our country ever. Do you think that he wants to have people pissed off at Republicans because he's evicting everybody right before the elections? Never. It ain't gonna happen. There's, in my mind, and I could be completely wrong, there is no way in hell that he's going to release the moratorium and have everybody evicted prior to November 3rd. Right now, we're locked in. And I gotta believe politicians are locked in as well. The voting in Florida is going to be so close that evicting people on November 1st could trip the presidential election. So I'm thinking that, and then if you extend it from November 1st to December 1st, who wants to be seen as the person evicting people during a Christmas holiday? I mean, what kind of Scrooge are you if that's something you want to do? So I'm almost thinking we're looking at January 1st before this thing hits again. I really, really don't think that November 1st is going to happen. I don't think October 1st is going to happen because you don't want to do it for November. I do not think Ron DeSantis wants to get involved with potentially throwing Florida one way or the other prior to the election. What does it sound like to you? Does that make sense? Do you think that he wants to impact the presidential election prior to November 3rd? If you think he doesn't care, and that he doesn't have any political aspirations of his own, then yeah, it's going to be over on October 1st and everyone's going to start getting evicted. But I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think there's any way in hell that he throws people to the wolves before the election. With the number of people who are behind in rent, it could, between who they know and their family members and everything else, we could be talking 50,000 people that this impacts, between the people getting evicted and their extended family and people they know. How would you feel if you knew that one of your friends got tossed out on their butt right before the election by the Republican governor? Think about that. So if you're a landlord, I think you better strap in for the long haul, bud. I just don't see this thing happening. I could be wrong, of course. I have nothing to go by other than the fact of I'm on Twitter every single day. I see the polling. I see what's going on in the streets, as we all do. And I do not think Ron DeSantis wants to add fuel to the fire and evict people right before the election. I'd love to hear your comments. You tell me, what do you think is going to happen? You think that DeSantis will go ahead and just toss people out, get the ball rolling, and get as many people as evicted as possible before the election? How do you think that would impact things? If we just use a modicum of common sense, we would see that would be disastrous. The newspapers, the media would destroy Ron DeSantis. I think they wait with bated breath every month to see when he's going to release the hounds of evictions and foreclosures. It's a no-win situation for people right now, and especially politically. Now that the president has made Mar-a-Lago his primary residence, and he's a member here of Palm Beach County, could you imagine? Could you even imagine on November 1st, a ton of evictions and foreclosures hitting the courts and being released and people getting evicted with no place to go right before an election? What do you think his opponent would do? Of course you'd pounce all over that. Hey, look what he's doing. They're throwing people out of their homes. That's why I don't think it can happen. So understand as well that the other problem with this, with him waiting to the last minute, is the backlog keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm seeing property, especially here in Boca, go through the roof in terms of pricing. I'm watching prices go up 5-10% sometimes a month. It's getting crazy. A house that was for sale in March for $350 is now $500,000 house, and it's going. It's selling within 3 or 4 days. Literally, a house up the block from me never even went on the MLS. It was a pocket listing for a realtor. It's a 2-2, very nice house. 2-2 with a pool, really nice. I think like 1,600 square feet. Gorgeous house, absolutely gorgeous. Sold for $520,000 without ever getting to sight unseen buyers. People moving from points up north, just saying, I'm in. I'm buying this house. I'm moving here. But a lot of realtors, a lot of people never look at the shadow inventory. I've been talking to you a lot about absorption rate, and there's just so much absorption. There's so many properties. You can do your own look on the court system and see how many are still subject to eviction. There's a ton of foreclosures. What do you think is going to happen when those properties hit the market? Boom. Property values have to go down. So this is going to be a short show, not my usual hour, because I just wanted to get this out about the eviction moratorium. It's really important that people understand what they need to be doing and how to get some help. Call some lawyers, call legal aid, get some free help. But you got to file these motions. You got to file this motion. Hopefully it's not too late. If you got filed on and you didn't answer within a 5-day period, you're probably going to be too late. If you thought that DeSantis said there was going to be no evictions and understood that to mean he didn't have to do anything, you're probably going to be screwed. But the good part is you got 30 days to make something happen. Even if you've been found, defaulted out, Even if you've been found in the wrong, you still have 30 days. Today's September 1st, October 1st is the next thing. As I've told you, I think it's going to get extended again, but you have at least 30 days. Make your arrangements. Get out if you have to. Don't sit with the gun pointed at your head. Don't sit, as I said, with the sword of Damocles just waiting. It's in your best interest to go ahead and do it now. Like I said, I believe it won't happen through the end of the year because of the political things and holidays. But I have nothing to base that on. Nobody does. And you don't want to be the person sitting there, or actually the other way around, standing when the music stops and you don't have a chair. Because that knock on the door is extremely brutal. I've been involved in it. Unfortunately, I've had to evict many tenants over the last 20 years. And when they don't understand, they don't understand that you post a notice and the notice says you have to be out in 24 hours. They don't understand that that's a hard deadline. They don't understand after that 24 hours at any time, the sheriff will come to your door, knock on the door and say, get out. Literally, you have to leave the premises. All of your stuff is now your landlord's. I can't tell you how much stuff I've accumulated over years and had to, but at the same time, I would, not a complete heel. I would allow people to come back and get their stuff once it was placed on the curb. It all gets tossed out. I also can't believe how many people just walked away and left so much stuff sitting in the house. Just said, the heck with it. It's a brutal thing, and it's emotionally devastating when the sheriff knocks on the door and says, you got to get out. What do you mean? Get your shoes, get your coat, you got 10 minutes, and you got to get out. I've seen grown men cry. It's heartbreaking. But if you don't prepare for October 1st, and October 1st comes and you have a reprieve till November 1st, fine. But you have to know what's coming. You have to understand that as soon as October 1st comes, you may get a knock on the door the next day that says you have to get out. So if you haven't gone past your time frame, find a paralegal or somebody at legal aid or an attorney and file the motion that specifically says, I've been impacted negatively by the COVID virus. If you don't do that, you have no leg to stand on. And you'll still owe the money. See, it's not an either or situation. Hey, listen, I'm going to move out and, the heck with what I owe. No. That's going to be the next phase of problems. See, in most evictions, they happen so quickly, you're not going to accumulate a lot of debt to the landlord. If you get 1 month behind or so, they're going to file on you and you're going to owe 1 month and they're not going to chase you. This time, you may have people 6, 7, 8 months in arrears. And once you're kicked out, you still owe that money. Now they're going to come to your job and they're going to garnish your wages and they're going to try and sue you. And, it's a freaking nightmare coming. It's an absolute nightmare coming that I don't think a lot of people are looking at. If you've never evicted someone, if you've never foreclosed on someone, you don't know what it's like. People's lives are going to be destroyed. Absolutely destroyed. Now, without sounding like a complete ass, that also spells a tremendous amount of opportunity for real estate investing. There's going to be so many foreclosures, and there's going to be a ton of people looking for someplace to live because they've been evicted. So on both sides, if you're a landlord who buys and holds, you're going to basically have your pick of the litter in terms of new tenants. And these are probably going to be tenants with money. I bet you there's going to be a ton of people who have sat on funds for months and months and months, and they're ready to pay to move into someplace. And as a person who personally buys foreclosures, I know I can see the list pendants volume in Palm Beach and Broward and Dade, so I know what's coming. And so there's a ton of opportunity to talk to people. So we're getting our money ready and our funding in place. In fact, put a contract on a property today. As soon as I get it back, I'll be pulling out the old victory cigar tomorrow probably. So I want you guys to understand, the moratorium does not mean the rent goes away. The moratorium doesn't mean that you can just not do anything and not get kicked out. He changed language. It's very important for you to understand. You have to show that you were impacted by the COVID. There's no other way around it. You have to file a motion in court proving that the coronavirus caused you to make payments. You're gonna have to file that. There's no other way around it. Nobody was talking about that. Everyone was saying, hey, listen, it's just a moratorium. No, it changed last month and he renewed that. You have to show. Now, for a lot of people, there's not a problem showing that you were impacted by the virus, except if you didn't do it in that 3 or 5 day period that you had allotted to you, you're in trouble. And I think that's problematic for DeSantis and some other people, some other attorneys that didn't really explain that. And I don't know how judges are going to react to, hey, listen, if these people couldn't afford to pay rent, then they couldn't afford to get an attorney. And if they couldn't afford to get an attorney, they have no idea what filing a motion is. There's just no clue that most people, lay people who aren't in the real estate business, would understand that you need to file a motion of some sort in order to not be evicted. Clock's ticking, guys. And I think you're going to need to really dig in and hopefully find someone who can help you out. And for the rest of us who are investing in this stuff, be ready. Just absolutely be ready. Sorry for the technical difficulties earlier today, but I'll see you tomorrow.
Your source for profit. Hear what you need to know to succeed in today's real estate market.